She walked into a high-end boutique to browse like anyone else. But within minutes, she was being followed, questioned, and searched. Not because she did anything wrong, but because of the color of her skin. What happened next? It didn't just expose racism. It started a movement that shook the nation. You won't believe how this story ends. She smiled as she walked into the store. It was just another sunny afternoon in Atlanta. Bree Johnson, a 24-year-old college student, had just finished her shift at the local community center where she volunteered with underprivileged kids. Her day had been long but fulfilling, helping kids with homework, organizing art supplies, and listening to the excited stories of children who didn't always have someone to talk to. She found joy in those moments in making people feel seen. Now she just wanted a little me time and maybe a new dress for her cousin's upcoming graduation party, wearing a simple gray hoodie, jeans, and white sneakers, with her earbuds tucked in and her phone playing her favorite playlist. She stepped into one of the city's most upscale fashion boutiques in Midtown. The boutique was modern, elegant, and full of soft, ambient music, glass shelves, and clothing tags with prices that silently screamed luxury. Bree wasn't planning to buy anything, at least not yet. She just loved fashion and enjoyed looking at beautiful pieces, dreaming of the day she could afford them on her own. But within minutes, everything changed. A sharp voice echoed from behind her. "Can I help you?" Bree paused and turned, expecting the usual retail greeting. But this wasn't the friendly kind of, "Can I help you?" The tone was clipped, suspicious, like she had done something wrong just by walking in. The store manager stood nearby, arms crossed, posture stiff, eyes narrowed directly at her. Bree glanced around. There were 4 other customers in the store, all of them white. 2 were browsing handbags. 1 was being helped by a smiling clerk. No one else was being watched. No one else had been approached with suspicion. Just her. She took out 1 earbud and responded politely. "Just looking, thank you." But the manager didn't walk away. In fact, he seemed to hover, pretending to straighten hangers on the nearby rack while keeping his eyes locked on Bree. She moved to another section of the store. Behind her, she could hear the soft sound of shoes following. Not just 1 pair, 2. Another employee had joined the manager, whispering something too quietly to hear. Bree's stomach tightened. She hadn't done anything wrong, but she could feel judgment clinging to her like static. Her skin, her hoodie, her presence, it all seemed to make her guilty in their eyes. Then came the moment that would shift everything. As Bree bent down to admire a pair of sleek black heels on a lower shelf, a sudden loud beep, beep, beep pierced the calm. The anti-theft alarm at the entrance buzzed as a woman pushed a stroller through the exit. The alarm kept going, but the woman, a stylish blonde in designer sunglasses, looked confused, glanced back, and kept walking. No one stopped her. Instead, 2 security guards appeared from the back and made a beeline, not to the exit but to Bree. "Ma'am, we're going to need to check your bag," one of them said. Bree blinked. "Excuse me?" "We had a sensor go off, it's just a routine check." Her voice was calm, but her heart was pounding. "I didn't even leave the store. I just got here." But they didn't seem to care. One guard gestured for her to step aside right in front of a display table. Other shoppers paused to look. The employees kept staring. The same manager who had greeted her stood a few feet away with his arms still folded. Bree's face flushed, not with guilt, but humiliation. She'd done nothing wrong, but here she was being treated like a thief in a store she hadn't even purchased anything from. She looked down at her tote bag, then back at the guards. Her hands trembled, not from fear but from fury. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and hit record. "I haven't taken anything," she said, loud enough for her camera and everyone around to hear. "Why are you checking me? That woman just walked out when the alarm went off. Why didn't you stop her?" The guards stiffened. One of them reached toward the phone, but Bree took a step back, keeping the camera pointed. "Don't touch me, and don't touch my phone." She held it steady, capturing everything, the guards, the suspicious stares, the store's logo behind them. When they finally let her go, after finding nothing in her bag, she left the store, still recording, still shaking. As soon as she got outside, she uploaded the video to Twitter and Instagram. No fancy captions, just the truth. "I was just browsing. She walked out with stuff. They stopped me, not her. Why? Because I'm black." The video went viral overnight. 3 million views, then 5, then 10. Outrage poured in from every corner of the internet. Celebrities shared it. Activists reposted it. Civil rights lawyers offered to take her case for free. The boutique's social media accounts were flooded with thousands of angry comments. The store issued a vague statement about standard protocol and misunderstandings. But it wasn't enough. The truth came out fast. Bree wasn't the first. Other black customers shared similar stories in the comments. Former employees stepped forward, admitting they'd been told to watch certain types. And that woman with the stroller? Security footage revealed she had in fact taken unpaid items. No one had stopped her. No one had followed her. She didn't fit the profile, but Bree did. She didn't stay silent. She filed a lawsuit and began speaking publicly about retail racism. Her story made headlines. News anchors asked her how she stayed so calm. School groups invited her to speak. She turned her pain into purpose. They stopped her because she was black. But what happened? Next, she made the world listen. Bree replied politely, "Just looking, thank you." She offered a small smile, hoping the manager would back off. But he didn't. He stayed close, pretending to arrange a display of folded sweaters but never taking his eyes off her. It was obvious. Each step she took, each rack she browsed, he was just a few feet away, as if her mere presence in the store was some kind of threat. She tried to ignore it. She'd experienced this before. Subtle suspicion, eyes following her through stores, clerks offering help far too insistently. It was nothing new, but it still stung every time. She reminded herself to breathe, to stay calm. She hadn't done anything wrong. She was just a young woman who liked fashion and had every right to be there. A few moments later, another store employee appeared. A younger woman, holding a clipboard, joined the manager. They whispered something Bree couldn't hear, both glancing in her direction. Bree shifted uncomfortably and moved toward the shoe section, hoping the distance might buy her a little peace. But like shadows, they followed. Their presence wrapped around her like tension in the air before a storm. Then, without warning, the front door buzzed with a loud beep, beep, beep. Everyone turned toward the sound. The anti-theft scanner had been triggered. A woman, stylish and confident, was walking out of the store with a baby stroller. She looked confused by the sound, glancing back momentarily, then casually continued out the door. No panic, no rushing. Just a shrug and a step into the sunlight. But even as the sound faded, something strange happened. Security didn't go after her. Instead, 2 uniformed guards emerged from the back of the store, heading directly toward Bree. "Ma'am, we're going to have to check your bag," one of them said, tone firm and expression unreadable. Bree blinked. "What? Why?" "There was an alert," the other added. "Just a precaution." "A precaution," she repeated. "I didn't even go near the door, I just got here." But they weren't listening. The request wasn't really a request. It was a command dressed up to sound polite. One of the guards gestured toward a table by the fitting rooms. "Over here, please." Shoppers were watching now. The room, just moments ago filled with quiet music and the gentle rustle of clothing, had gone awkwardly silent. Bree could feel the heat rising in her cheeks. Her pulse quickened. Her hands began to shake, not out of fear but out of a burning sense of humiliation. She had done nothing. Nothing at all. She hadn't touched anything except one pair of heels she hadn't even picked up. Yet here she was, being pulled aside, like she'd tried to steal something. As they led her a few feet away, she noticed the woman with the stroller disappearing into the crowd outside. No one stopped her. No one asked her questions. No guards checked her bags. All eyes were still on Bree. At the table, one of the guards asked her to open her tote bag. She hesitated. "Are you serious?" she asked, trying to hold on to her composure. "Just cooperate, ma'am." The manager chimed in, standing nearby with a slight frown. "This will be quick." Her voice trembled slightly as she unzipped her bag, revealing a water bottle, her wallet, a sketchbook, and a half-eaten granola bar. Nothing else. The guard poked through with gloved hands, rifling through her personal belongings, while the other glanced over her shoulder like she was about to make a run for it. They said nothing, just kept searching. She could feel the stares from other customers, behind her. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor. But more than that, she felt something heavier building inside her. Rage. Quiet, cold, burning rage. They were treating her like a criminal. Whispers drifted from nearby shoppers. One woman clutched her purse a little closer. Another turned her child's head away. And the stroller woman, gone. Not a word, not a glance, not a question. When they finally finished and found nothing, as she knew they would, the guard muttered something like, "You're good to go." No apology. No acknowledgement of the mistake. Just an awkward end to a degrading ordeal. Bree zipped her bag shut, with shaky hands, and slowly stood up. She looked at the manager, who still stared at her like a problem he hadn't solved yet. For a moment she considered walking out silently, letting it go. But something in her refused. She pulled out her phone, turned on the camera, and hit record. "I came in here to browse," she said clearly, staring into the lens. "That woman walked out when the alarm went off, but you came after me. You searched me, treated me like a thief. Why?" No one answered. She turned the phone slightly, capturing the store's logo, the manager, the guards, the scene that had just unfolded. They didn't stop her. They stopped me. I wonder why. And with that, she left the store, the weight of shame replaced by something stronger, purpose. By the time she made it to the sidewalk, the video was already uploading. She didn't expect it to go viral. She just needed to speak, to say it aloud, to stop being quiet about things so many people tried to brush off or pretend didn't happen. She walked away with her head high, not because she was okay, but because she refused to let them shrink her. They stopped her because she was black. But the story didn't end there. Not this time. You said Bree was furious, but she kept her cool. Everything inside her was screaming. The humiliation, the anger, the injustice, it all boiled under her skin. But she had learned long ago that for people who looked like her, staying calm wasn't just a reaction, it was survival. So instead of yelling or storming out, she did something smarter. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and hit record. Her voice was steady, but you could hear the hurt in it. "Why are you searching me and not her?" she asked the security guards. She left with items. "I haven't even touched anything." The guard glanced at the camera, suddenly looking uncomfortable. One of the store employees stepped forward, trying to block the shot, even reaching toward her phone. But Bree took a quick step back, keeping her camera up and focused. "Don't touch me," she said firmly, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "I have every right to record this." The guard who had searched her shifted awkwardly. The others seemed to freeze. Bree didn't stop recording. She made sure to pan across the store, capturing the employees, the logo, the manager still hovering in the background like he was watching a security feed. She wanted everyone to see what had happened. Not just the aftermath, but the cold, silent accusation that followed her from the moment she walked in. Within minutes of leaving the boutique, Bree uploaded the video to her Instagram story and Twitter account. She didn't add any dramatic music or filters. She didn't need to. The footage spoke for itself. It was raw, it was real, and it showed exactly what too many people experienced every day but rarely had proof of. Her caption was simple. "Didn't even touch anything. They let the woman who set off the alarm walk free. They searched me. Why?" By the time Bree got home, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. At first it was just a few likes, a couple of shares, and comments from friends. But then it started spreading fast. Her followers reposted it. Then their followers did. Then came the influencers. And then the blue check marks. By midnight, it had over 500,000 views. By morning, the number had climbed past 3 million. The internet exploded. People were outraged. The comment sections filled with anger, disbelief, and painful recognition. "This happened to me too," one user wrote. "Exactly the same. Different store. Same story." Another said, "They do this to us all the time. Thank you for recording." Its celebrities began sharing the video with hashtags like Shopping While Black and Justice for Bree. Musicians, actors, and social justice advocates reposted the footage with messages of support. Bree's name began trending nationally. News outlets picked up the story within hours. "College student wrongly accused of theft." "Because she's black," read one headline. "Viral video sparks outrage over racial profiling in luxury retail," read another. Her face was suddenly everywhere. TV news, blog sites, social media clips. Everyone was talking about the girl who kept her composure while being unfairly treated, and who had the courage to call it out. The boutique's social media accounts went into lockdown. Thousands of angry comments flooded their latest posts, demanding an apology, calling out the injustice, and threatening boycotts. The store turned off its comments, but the damage had already been done. By noon that day, the company released a statement. It was short and carefully worded. They called it a routine check, said they were committed to creating an inclusive environment, and that they were looking into the incident. But it wasn't enough. Not even close. The video told a different story. People had seen it. They saw Bree standing calmly while two guards went through her bag in the middle of the store. They saw the woman who had triggered the anti-theft alarm walk right out without being stopped or questioned. And they saw how the employees responded, not to the alarm but to Bree, the only black woman in the boutique. The statement only added fuel to the fire. It wasn't just about one girl in one store anymore. It was about a pattern, a system, an ugly truth too often ignored or denied. Former employees of the boutique began speaking out anonymously. Several claimed that they had been trained, either directly or indirectly, to keep an eye on certain customers. One even said, "We were told to watch people who didn't look like they belonged." We all knew what that meant. Other stories began to surface. Videos, posts, blogs. It was as if Bree's moment had opened a floodgate. Suddenly, people were no longer afraid to say what they'd experienced for years. Through it all, Bree remained composed. She did interviews from her small apartment, sitting on a couch in front of a bookshelf filled with school textbooks and community outreach pamphlets. When asked how she felt, she said, "I'm tired, not just for myself, but for everyone who's gone through this and never had a phone or a platform or anyone who believed them. I recorded it because I knew they wouldn't believe me otherwise, and I was right." She didn't yell. She didn't cry on camera. She just told the truth. And that honesty resonated more than any speech or hashtag could. Her quiet dignity in the face of public humiliation struck a nerve. She wasn't just a student anymore. She had become a symbol of resilience, of injustice, and of the power of truth in a world too eager to pretend nothing's wrong. As the days went on, the pressure on the boutique grew. Petitions were started. Protests were organized outside the store. And Bree? She didn't just fade into the background. She used the moment to spark something bigger. But it had all started with that one decision, to pull out her phone and speak up. She had been stopped, searched and shamed. But the world was listening now, and Bree had found her voice. As pressure mounted, more truth came to light. What had happened to Bree wasn't just a one-off mistake. It wasn't a simple misunderstanding. The video had sparked a wave of conversation, but behind that conversation were years of unspoken experiences. People began digging deeper. Former employees, other shoppers, even investigative journalists. And what they uncovered was damning. Bree wasn't the first black customer to face that treatment at the boutique. Not even close. Several former staff members came forward anonymously, sharing eerily similar stories. They described mandatory customer awareness meetings where subtle coded language was used. Phrases like, "Look out for suspicious behavior," "Watch for wandering eyes," and "Some customers may pretend to browse." At first, it sounded like standard protocol, but the patterns were obvious. The certain customers they were told to watch almost always turned out to be black or brown. One former employee admitted, "It wasn't always direct, but we got the message." If a black customer came in wearing casual clothes, especially if they were alone, we were supposed to keep an eye on them. Some of us called it fashionable racism. Smile at their face, watch their hands. Some employees had even quit because of it. One woman, who had worked at the store for just under a year, said, "I couldn't take it. I started dreading every shift. I knew what I was being asked to do and it made me feel sick." The revelations didn't end there. Remember the woman with the stroller? The one who had triggered the alarm and walked out while everyone's attention turned to Bree? Security footage finally emerged. A journalist obtained the store's internal surveillance video from that afternoon, and what it showed made things even worse for the boutique. The woman with the stroller had walked through multiple aisles, stuffing several high-end items into the bottom of her stroller under a blanket. She had never gone to the counter, never made a move to pay. And when the alarm went off, she simply glanced back, adjusted her sunglasses, and strolled out casually. No panic, no rush. It was deliberate. She had shoplifted, plain and simple, but no one stopped her. No one chased after her. No one even noticed. Why? Because she didn't fit the store's so-called profile. She was white, dressed in designer clothes. She looked like someone who belonged, and in their eyes that made her innocent, by default. Meanwhile, Bree, wearing a hoodie, headphones, and carrying a sketchbook, had done absolutely nothing. She hadn't touched a single item, hadn't gone near the door, and yet she was the one stopped, questioned, searched, and embarrassed in front of strangers, all because of the color of her skin. The public reaction grew even stronger. Civil rights organizations issued statements. National news outlets ran panel discussions on racial profiling in retail. Social media stayed ablaze with hashtags like "Shash Justice for Bree" and "Shash Retail Racism." It wasn't just about one store anymore. It had become a symbol for a deeper, systemic problem that had been normalized and ignored for too long. But through it all, Bree never let it be just about her. She started speaking publicly, not just on TV interviews, but at community events, college campuses, and online panels. In every conversation, she made one thing clear. She didn't just want an apology. She wanted change. She spoke about the quiet racism that doesn't make headlines, the kind that hides behind smiles and company policy. She talked about how exhausting it is to always be on alert, to constantly feel like you have to prove you belong, just to be treated with basic dignity. She began working with advocacy groups to push for policy changes in retail stores. More anti-bias training, better hiring practices, and most importantly, accountability. A petition demanding reform in the boutique chain's policies gained over 500,000 signatures in less than a week. Protesters gathered peacefully outside several of the brand's locations across the country, holding signs that read, "Being black is not a crime," and "We're watching now." The boutique eventually issued a second statement, this time longer, more serious. They promised an internal investigation, staff retraining, and a formal apology to Bree. But by then, their reputation was already stained. Bree's story had done something bigger than just shine a light on one bad moment. It forced an industry and a society to look in the mirror. In one of her final interviews that month, a journalist asked her if she ever wished she hadn't recorded the moment. Bree thought about it for a long second. Then she said, "No, I wish I never had to. I wish I could just walk into a store and shop like anyone else, but since I couldn't, I'm glad I didn't stay silent. Because silence never changed anything." Her voice didn't tremble. It rang clear, strong, honest. What had started as a routine stop at a boutique had become a national conversation. A conversation that was uncomfortable for some but necessary for all. Bree had walked into a store as just another shopper. She, walked out as a voice for thousands, and the change she sparked? That was just the beginning. Within weeks, Bree became the face of a new movement. The video hadn't just gone viral, it had cracked open a conversation that had long been ignored. But instead of basking in attention or letting others speak for her, Bree chose to act. She wasn't content with a trending hashtag or a few headlines. She wanted to transform the moment into something bigger, something lasting. She began partnering with local activists, civil rights organizations, and a team of lawyers who believed in her mission. They didn't just want justice for Bree. They wanted structural change. Together, they filed a lawsuit not only against the boutique that had profiled her, but also began drafting proposals for stronger legislation to combat racial profiling in retail environments across the country. Bree became the voice of thousands who had similar stories but never got the chance to tell them. People started reaching out from all corners of the country, sharing their own experiences, thanking her for speaking up and asking what they could do to help. She started showing up everywhere. At first, it was small gatherings, community meetings, church events, student groups at local colleges. Then came the rallies, the marches, the national conferences. She stood on stages with a mic in her hand, not to shout or accuse, but to share her truth with power, clarity, and compassion. This wasn't just about me, she said to one packed auditorium. This was about a system that sees us as threats before it sees us as people. That day in the store, they didn't see a young woman. They didn't see a student, a mentor, a volunteer. They saw what they wanted to see, and that's why we're here, to change what they see, to change what they believe they have the right to do. Media outlets took notice. Bree wasn't just a story anymore, she was a symbol, an agent of change. Morning shows, primetime interviews, podcasts, documentaries, everyone wanted to hear from her. She spoke with calm, deliberate conviction, never dramatizing what happened, but also never downplaying it. She understood the weight of her platform and used it not for fame but for focus. And then one day she got the call. Oprah wanted to speak with her. Sitting across from one of the most iconic voices in the world, Bree kept her poise. She shared her story again, not for the millionth time, but like it mattered just as much as the first. Oprah listened carefully, her face filled with empathy and pride. "You didn't just endure something unjust," Oprah said during the interview. "You turned it into purpose. That's power." Millions watched that interview. Millions more felt something shift. Back at the boutique, the fallout continued. After their initial weak statement and the overwhelming backlash that followed, the store had no choice but to act. They shut down for what they called mandatory employee retraining. But by then, the public's trust had eroded. Customers boycotted. Influencers who once promoted the store cut ties. Celebrities publicly vowed to never shop there again. Their reputation was in shambles, and no PR campaign could save them from what the world had already seen. Several staff members were let go, including the manager and the guards involved in the incident. Others resigned on their own. The corporate leadership issued a full apology, this time with less spin and more sincerity. But for many, it was too little, too late. And Bree? She walked away from it stronger than ever. Not because it hadn't hurt, because it had. Deeply. She'd cried that night alone in her room after the adrenaline wore off. She'd questioned herself, wondered how many more times she'd have to explain her humanity to people who refused to see it. But she kept going. She kept speaking, organizing, building. She met with lawmakers to advocate for policy changes. She helped draft a bill aimed at holding retail chains accountable for racial profiling, calling for mandatory reporting and third-party bias audits. She also launched a non-profit initiative called Walk Tall, focused on educating youth of color about their rights and equipping them with tools to protect themselves in public spaces. Every time she stepped on stage, every time she gave an interview, she carried more than her own story. She carried the voices of so many who had stayed silent, or been silenced, for far too long. People started recognizing her in the streets. Young girls came up to her asking for selfies. Older women hugged her and whispered thank yous into her ear. She became someone people looked up to, not just because of what had happened to her, but because of what she did with it. In a powerful moment during a televised panel discussion, Bree looked straight into the camera and spoke not to the store, not to the press, but to every black person who had ever been unfairly judged, questioned, or followed around for no reason. "They tried to make me feel small," she said. "But now, I walk taller than ever. This isn't just about me. This is about every black person who's ever been judged before they've spoken a word. About every child who's told to shrink themselves to make others feel comfortable. About every moment we're made to apologize for existing. We're done apologizing." The crowd erupted in applause. Her story had started with a quiet afternoon, a hoodie, a pair of headphones, and a visit to a boutique. But it had become so much more. It had become a movement, a wake-up call, a demand for dignity. And Bree? She didn't just survive that moment, she transformed it. And through her, so did the world. So what can we learn from Bree's story? That racism isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it hides, behind polite smiles and store policies. But when people stand up and speak out like Bree did, it forces the world to look closer. She went in just to browse. They tried to stop her because of how she looked. But what happened next? She shocked the world and made it better. If this story moved you, inspired you, or opened your eyes, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another powerful story like this. Share this video to keep the conversation going. Together we can be the change. Thank you for watching.